Welcome back to The Lawyer You Know. Today we are breaking down the end of the eviction moratorium, and doesn't mean that landlords can just kick you out on your butt.
Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed.
As we talk eviction and topics like this, make sure you subscribe to our page and like this video so you don't miss anything we have in the future, and leave in the comments anything that's changing in the law in this post-COVID world. If you want us to unpack it, let us know and we will get to it. But today we're talking evictions, Pete. So the moratorium has ended. What a lot of people are calling a free ride for renters is over. What does it actually mean that this eviction moratorium is lifted?
What it means is that for purposes of Pinellas and Hillsborough counties, the 5,000 evictions that were filed between March and now, all of those are going to go through, which means the courts are going to do final hearings. The sheriff's office are going to come and actually move people out of their properties and put their couch on the corner.
So for the most part, what this means, and he's talking about our counties specifically, but this is happening in most of the states across the country. And he mentioned the evictions that were already filed. As this process has gone on, landlords have not stopped filing evictions. The courts have just stopped evicting tenants. So there's a huge backlog of landlords that have already filed these evictions. So those are coming to fruition now, and the courts are going to hear them and they are going to enter them. And they're not going to be as lenient based on the problems that people have had with COVID. So that's what's been kind of the overarching theme of why these evictions haven't been able to go through. They don't want to throw people out on the streets, but now that has changed. Why has it changed now?
Well, because the CDC had actually set the moratorium in the COVID protocols back in the end of 2020. Those now sunsetted. There was a push to get the Congress to extend those deadlines, and it just didn't happen. So at this point, the moratorium, meaning the cessation, has stopped. Everything now goes forward. It's opening of floodgates.
So let's talk about some specific questions, right? Yeah. So now that this is open, can landlords just kick tenants out on the street?
No, you still can't just go in there and take the door off the hinges and throw people's stuff on the street. You still have to go through the process, meaning that the judge has to issue the order. Once the order of eviction is issued, then you got to go to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office physically shows up and kind of monitors the process.
And they have to let you know that they're evicting you. They have to give you notice of the process. And all of the same rules apply to the eviction process that applied prior to COVID, prior to this moratorium, right? Are there any new rules post-COVID?
No, there's no new rules. But the part that is going to get a lot of people, I think, screwed up is if you filed for eviction back in, let's just say, January, and you did the 3-day notice and you posted everything where you were supposed to post, the court has just been sitting on your order. All that has to happen is now the moratorium is lifted, the judge goes in and stamps the order and sends it to the clerk's office, at which point things are going to happen really quickly.
And I have heard there's an order of priority that goes earliest to file, most rent outstanding, and bad relationships between landlords and tenants, because landlords can pick and choose who they're going to evict first from their building. So people are wondering, where am I going to end up in this situation? How good your relationship is with your landlord can go a long way.
Without a doubt.
And if you're starting to try to pay that rent, which brings me to my next question, back rent. Okay. All the rent you haven't been paying potentially over the last 18 months, is that waived? Is it gone, or do you still owe it?
You now have a judgment against you, or you potentially could have a judgment against you for not only all the money that you owe, plus interest and whatever penalties and fees are in your lease.
Can you be evicted for that back rent amount even if you're paying your rent currently?
Yes, because you still owe that money. Now, the reality is, if you are putting money in your landlord's pocket and you guys are working on some agreement, chances are they're not going to throw you out on the street.
Well, you're allowed to work out an agreement with your landlord, but just because you're paying your current rent now doesn't mean they can't evict you if you do have past due rent back from COVID.
That is correct.
Whether you have a job or not, which brings in a lot of discussion about unemployment and how those rules may be changing. So if you guys want us to do a video on the unemployment rules changing because they are pulling those extra and increased benefits, if you want to hear us do a video on that, drop your favorite emoji down in the comments so we can prep for and put out that video explaining how we think those unemployment benefits going away is going to affect our country and our economy. But back to the evictions. So how fast do you expect to see these evictions ordered and people out on the streets?
I think you're going to see orders happen really quick because it's literally a flip of a switch and the judge can just go in there and click all of the orders he wants to execute electronically. Now, it normally takes between 3 and 6 weeks to finalize the eviction, presuming it's uncontested. And what I mean by uncontested is presuming the tenant hasn't put money in the court's registry and is fighting the eviction because there's something wrong with the habitability of the property. Presuming that doesn't happen, 3 to 6 weeks, I'm going to guess you're going to see a lot more deputy sheriffs, because that's what you need to do an eviction. Deputy sheriffs actually assigned to these divisions so they can start moving the eviction process through. But it's not going to be instant to do 5,000 evictions.
How does it affect renters if they get evicted because this past due rent and they go to try to get a different lease?
It's
on your record.
It's on your record. And what happens is landlords right now are skittish anyway, because most of them are coming from a position where they hadn't been paid their rent for months. So they just evicted that tenant. So when they're looking to refill that, that vacancy, they're looking to see, am I just putting in another person that's got the exact same problem, therefore I'm in no better situation? So I think you're going to find a lot of people are going to have a hard time finding that next place to live.
But it's a lot of like supply and demand issues, because I would think if all these people can't afford the rent, as the landlord, you're going to have to lessen the rent to get somebody in there because something's better than nothing. Are you going to do shorter leases? What I think is going to happen practically is that landlords are going to try to work with their current tenant to not only continue to collect the rent that they're under the agreement, but also work on some kind of plan to pay that back rent or forgive a portion of that back rent so we can all move forward together. Again, especially if you have a good relationship with your landlord. There's nothing legally speaking, but that can go so far as with any situation.
I think you're going to see a little bit of both. You're going to see a socioeconomic demographic where there are so many people, there's an influx of people moving to Florida, and those areas where I call, good working apartment buildings and those, you're going to be, as a tenant, are going to have a hard time finding a place to live there because there is more demand for those than there is supply. Now, mom and pop landlords, they got a little house or a little trailer or something like that, chances are they're going to want to work with their tenants because they realize just getting that person out to put somebody else in is going to be just exchanging one issue for the next.
So where can people go? Renters that have a problem with this and they may have something on their record now and they can't do it, or they're still trying to work something out with their landlord. Are there any places they can go to try to create this change, extend this moratorium, or get some kind of benefits?
There is, and there's 2 ways to do this. First of all, my suggestion to everybody that's facing this is you need to talk to your landlord. Burying your head in the sand is not a good idea at this point.
Ignoring an eviction notice is not going to get you anywhere.
There is about $40 billion over from December and now into going into August that's been earmarked to help tenants that are back rent from the federal government. I'll give you an example. Hillsborough County has $40 million allocated to them, and they're just supposed to give this money away to tenants that qualify.
Right, you apply for this and
Sure.
you get this in. So yeah, the federal government he's talking about first was
Right.
a $21 billion and $25 billion just for rental assistance to fix or help this situation. So you can apply for and get that. The only way to extend the moratorium at this point would be congressional action.
Not going to happen.
Or state legislatures, and some states, like some of the ones that I'm sure you can guess, California, New York, are extending this eviction moratorium and allowing renters to stay in and not get evicted. What does that do to a landlord, though? There's got to be this trickle-down problem eventually.
It's a 2-stage problem, because if you can't pay the rent, the landlord, for the most part, can't pay his bills or his or her mortgage, at which point now they're delinquent in their ability to pay off their properties. So it just compounds the problem and spreads around.
And then gets to the bank, which nobody cares about the bank, right? Except for how it affects our economy. So yeah, I think that's a problem, and it's just kind of the best situation for everyone is to work out some kind of deal as a landlord, as a tenant, to pay partial or some, or make payments towards your back rent as you're still getting on your feet. Make payments on the rent that's still owed and current and going forward. That's the best solution for the country. That's the best solution for the landlord, the best solution for the tenant, the best solution for everybody. Now, the people that are going to get kicked out and are going to have no protection are the tenants that were jerks to the landlords throughout the process, didn't talk to them, didn't work with them, gave them the middle finger because they thought they were untouchable, and now they're able to be evicted. We have heard some stories of landlords running to the front of the line to get these people evicted while they're working with people that may owe more money,
Sure.
but they're working with them. So be the type of tenant that's working with your landlord. Be the type of landlord that's willing to work with your tenant. And legally speaking, you can figure out a way around this so you can continue to keep working, have your livelihood, and have your place to live together.
Yeah, and the reality is, and I'm sure we can find a way to post a link somewhere, there are all kinds of government agencies and charities that are set up to be able to distribute these rent funds to help people kind of bridge the gap. Go out there and apply. What's the worst that can happen?
Right, so that's our answer as far as this eviction moratorium being lifted. You're not going to get kicked out on your butts immediately, but you better start working with your landlord, and landlords start working with your tenants to make this work so we can keep moving forward and not backtrack anymore to where we were last year. That's all we have on this topic. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.